Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the first webinar of peer learning webinar series that are going to be organized in the scope of gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness activities, which are part of the work package 6 from our project Policy Answers. It's really nice to see you that we are all present today here because it's an interesting topic that is going to be discussed today. And in the same time, it's always interesting to hear another perspective because, as you know, for this webinar, we as well created our guidelines, which is going to be a main tool for our activities that we are going to implement and do, not only in the Policy Answers project, but as well, because this webinar is going to be recorded, hopefully that we will have an opportunity to inspire the other projects and in the same time share some successful practices that are going to be implemented. Before starting the webinar, as some of you already know, I'm Emilia Andonova, project manager in MIR Foundation. I would like to give the floor to Andrea Tronzoso from Formicablu, which is the work package 6 leader. And she's going to give you the welcoming words and states briefly about the aim and the benefits of this peer learning webinar. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia. Welcome to this first peer learning policy answers webinar. I have to say that we're very excited to embark on this journey of peer learning and collaboration among partners. As we gather here today, I think we emphasize the significance of equity, gender mainstreaming, and inclusiveness that are the very core of the topics shared in these guidelines. These principles are really not mere buzzwords. Embracing equity means providing equal opportunities for all to contribute to the advancements of science and technology. On the other hand, gender mainstreaming means tapping into the full potential of diverse perspectives, bringing together the best of human beings. And inclusiveness means breaking down barriers and fostering a welcoming environment and amplifying the voices of the ones that are often unheard. So I really think that we can create a more innovative future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And thank you for participating in this crucial conversation and journey of policy answers.
Thank you, Andrea. Before starting the webinar, I would like to go through the agenda. So we are very excited that today we are going to have a talk from Gabriela Kostowska-Bogojska, which is the task leader from 6.5, and in the same time, Executive Director of MIR Foundation. She's going to give us the structure of the guideline. She's going to talk more about the relevance of the topics, the key concepts. As well, we're going to see toolbox presentation. We're going to check as well the data collection, the roles and responsibilities from all of our partners. And after that, on our big, how to say, it's a pleasure when we have a collaboration among two of the projects. So we're going to have Angela Pepic, which is the head of the Center for Development and Research Support from University of Banja Luka. She's going to talk more about the VBC project, talking about the working groups, the cooperation, engagement with the stakeholders, result benefits and gender aspects that are going to be addressed. And in the same time, she's going to speak more about the gaps in the Western Balkan project, how it is the support in this regard, with particular focus on the mapping results and gender aspects which are going to be addressed. We're going to finish as well with the recommendation for the improved and inclusiveness STEAM education. And in the same time, here comes the best part for all of you, which is part of our agenda where we're going to dedicate time for Q&A and discussion. So because as you can see that we are a smaller group, on the beginning we mentioned that the recording of this webinar is going to be posted on our Policy Answers platform. We would like to keep some kind of rules that we are going to agree. So it's going to be very nice if we keep our cameras on, and to be muted, because it's nice when we are having a webinar in a way of talking and more into participation and involvement from your side. We will appreciate a lot if you have your questions and if you send them into the chat. because as I mentioned before, we're going to have a Q&A discussion and session where all of your questions are going to be answered. So if you would like as well to join into the discussion, you can wait that part where you can raise your hand, and then you can as well share some good practice, or if you want to join in some of the discussion and to talk more. In the same time, I would like to welcome you once again into the webinar and take it as a time for enjoyment and learning new things, and in the same time maybe as a motivation that it's going to be for future activities that we are going to have. And in the same time, we will really appreciate if it comes a recommendation from your side, maybe that we can involve some of the things that were not that will not be mentioned in this webinar. I would not like to take most of the time, so I will give the floor to Gabriela. And of course, she's going to share a presentation where we're gonna see everything that was mentioned before.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you for the nice introduction. So just let me share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this peer learning webinar from my side as well. It's a pleasure to be part of the first peer learning webinar. And we are, as mentioned by Andrea and by Emilia, we're very excited that we're kicking off with the peer learning and networking activities within our Policy Answers project. And the idea for my presentation today is basically to go through the concept that we as a project adopted when it comes to guidelines on gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness. So of course, we are going to present the guideline that we have all together jointly created, because that is one of the key features of our Policy Answer project. From the day that we started to create the project until today, and it's going to be, I'm very sure, until the end and afterwards, is the co-creation and collaboration between partners. So nothing is done in isolation. That is one of the great things about the project. Then, of course, we will have a glimpse and look at the proposed toolbox. What are the tools that we are going to use, or we are already using, of course, and data collection, how it is done and why it is done, and where the results will be used later on. But I'm going to do it in a manner that it is, of course, informative for the partners within the project, but also in a manner that might inspire our peers, our collaborators, other stakeholders that might be interested in applying similar approach in their projects or their initiatives. So that's in the spirit of peer learning, of course, because this is a peer learning webinar. So let's, in that sense, start from what is our approach. Well, we first thought about how to do gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness of our project activities. So the basic idea is first to set up the framework. What are the activities? Which activities will undergo gender and inclusiveness sensitivity analysis, and later on evaluation and everything. And when it comes to many things for many things in life, for gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness especially, it's all about the context. How you put it in the context, what is feasible, what can you do, what is reasonable, what data can you collect, why are you doing that? So because it's a very, very broad topic, and it's very much important how you put it into the context of the project, especially in a project like Policy Answers that does not deal with gender and inclusiveness as such. It is a cross-cutting and horizontal activity now almost in every Horizon Europe project, but this is not a project about gender. It's not a project about inclusiveness. So it's very important how you put it into the context. And then it's also important not only to have a guideline that will guide the task leaders, work package leaders on how to do it. It is also important in order to support this process of continuous improvement to work on your own capacities as partners within the project, but also within the target group and the beneficiaries. And this is a project about organizations, stakeholders, support organization, policy, many different stakeholders in the Western Balkans. So it's about building capacity. So we decided then on the top of the guideline to design a capacity building and networking program. This is where we are now for the facilitate peer exchange and discussion on gender mainstreaming and innovation and inclusiveness, sorry, because the idea is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's so many good, great initiatives out there. I will talk a little bit later on about the stakeholder analysis that we have undertaken. And I'm very happy that we have today with us Angela. She's representing one such an initiative. So that's about facilitating peer exchanges and discussion on gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness. And of course, use the opportunity that Policy Answer and its communication hub offers to increase visibility on these very important topics. And it's not surprise why this task is basically nested within the dissemination and communication work package. So that is the concept. And if somebody asks me to explain very briefly what gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness is about, you know, if you look at about the information in social sciences studies or on offline or online, you will find tons and tons of information. But basically, it's all about providing equal access, equal participation, and equal benefits for everyone that concerns you within your own initiative. So in our case, project team members, stakeholders that we work with, of course, target groups, beneficiaries. So everybody to be given a chance to have as Andrea mentioned, to be heard, to be involved in the proper manner. So this is not only the right thing to do, because that's what we should do in our workers' research organizations or other type of organizations doing projects, but it's also very beneficial for the project itself. So it's, you know, twofold benefit. Why? Because at the end, you will have a more effective project. The more different needs you hear and try to address, then your impact and your outcomes will be more meaningful. That's one thing. Another thing is if you have diverse governance, diverse people in your team, you'll have many different perspectives, and that will, of course, enhance not only the democracy and participatory approach, whatever you may call it, but also you will benefit from very different perspective. That's the beauty. And at the end, you will have more effective project, because we all aim at that, not only to get the project and to implement it, but to be as most effective as possible. Then you collect data, which means knowledge, which means that you are empowered to make evidence-based decisions. And that, once again, contributes to the project, but not to forget that it's broader than the project. It's about socioeconomic development, because if you empower everyone in your own field, depends on the project, of course, that will be the impact at the end. Then if you empower everyone, then you leave no one behind, and then at the end, those people will contribute to the socioeconomic development on a long term. So that's the principle and benefits on why you do gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness in a project, in an organization, in an initiative. Now, the question is how you do it. You know, the process. There are so many different things that you can do, so many different methodologies that you can use. What I can advise at the very beginning is to have a certain support and help from a gender equality expert or gender mainstreaming expert, especially in the sense when you do the analysis, when you need to define the framework, when you need to define the context. Just to be aware of the context and not to go to overburden a project or an initiative, but to have, you know, a seamless and easy process of doing the gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness. So at the very beginning, it's very important to work with these people that have this background on understanding what is the central term and concept relevant for you and for your own initiative, because there are many different things that you can do. And first, you need to define what are you going to work on and what is relevant. So for us, it's relevant to understand what discrimination is all about, what type of discriminations are there, how we can recognize it, because sometimes you don't even recognize certain types of discrimination because you're not very sure what is it a discrimination or not. So understanding gender, what does gender mean opposite to sexual orientation or things like that? What does integrity mean? What does inclusiveness, intersectionality. So all of these concepts and terms needs to be, first of all, identified as relevant for your initiative and then clearly defined. And these are included at the very beginning of our guidelines so that we all have a clear understanding. And sometimes I even myself, I found myself, mixing some terms and concepts. So it's always very good to have it written down so that you can always have a clear understanding, because you can never address something if you don't understand it at the very first or recognize it at the first place. And then it's important to do the analysis of the work packages, because not all of the activities might be interesting, or it might be relevant for them to do the gender mainstream or inclusiveness, or even it might be relevant, but it's not possible to do it for certain reasons, for certain limitations. So that's why the second step is doing the analysis, where you identify the different types of activities, and then in the next phase you identify what do you want to achieve there. Okay, I will target, for instance, meetings, conferences, webinars, but what would I like to achieve when it comes to gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness? And then, of course, defining the tools, how I'm going to check on the implementation of the guidelines, on the recommendations. And I have to mention that this guideline is, of course, of voluntary nature, but that does not mean that we're not following through. I mean that, but for what I have seen so far, we've been 18 months in the project. We didn't have the guideline from the very beginning, but we all were very conscious about the gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness part. And I see that all of the partners are all committed to gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness as much as possible, and as much as we have the possibility to gather data and to implement the tools. And I'm convinced that we are going to be even better with all the different capacity building activities that will follow as a next step. That is the designing the capacity building program. I will come back to this a little bit later in my presentation, where I'm going to present you what type of activities we have designed for building our own skills and capacities within the project, but many of them will be recorded and available for all the other stakeholders, like this webinar. And I'm sure that that will also contribute to the impact that I was mentioning at the beginning. And then, of course, how are we going to follow up on the implementation of the manual, because it's not, the idea is not to do an evaluation or assessment just for the sake of evaluation, whether what we have said is being followed. The idea is to basically find rooms for continuous improvement and identify some good practices, because I'm very much convinced that we are going to be finding very, very good practices in different phases of the implementation of the manual. So if I'm supposed to answer the question, what are the activities that are usual suspects for gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness? So you have a project, you have many different activities inside. So the key type of activities to look for when you think about gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness, think about engagements, documents, and of course, project management activities. Number one and number two deals a lot with people. So everything that deals with people, with stakeholders, with team, with your key target group and beneficiaries, that is where you have to look at gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness aspects. So engagements in our case in Policy Answer projects are conferences, meetings, consultations, workshops. We will soon also have a mobility. So all different type of activities where you have an engagement with different types of stakeholders, including team member from the project, team members, sorry. And then when it comes to the documents, in our case, we have reports, policy briefs, and of course, every project has some sort of dissemination material. So this is a place where you have to be careful and you have to think about how you're going to be gender and inclusiveness sensitive. And of course, project management activities, as I mentioned. So these are the three types, key type of activities that you should be looking in your stakeholder, analysis of the project activities, and trying to find what can you and what you should achieve. And once again, I will emphasize the feasibility and the relevance, to what extent you can of course go very much and have this very long bullet points list what you want to achieve, but you also have to be very pragmatic and practical, and you have to be aware of the context. What is it that you can do? So in the engagements, of course, you have to think about how you will provide access to everyone, how you're going to create a safe space for everyone, collect different opinions. So all of these are stated in our guidelines. What are our key objectives? What do we want to achieve when we have a conference, when we have a workshop, then you define the work packages to which it relates and which tasks. So it can be all tasks, for instance, in work package 1, because work package 1 that we have in Policy Answers is about policy dialogue. It's about most of the engagement happens there with also many different stakeholders, but also there are other work packages like the work package 3, where we do the capacity building for the stakeholders in the Western Balkan economies. So there are many different things that we need to consider. But in some work packages, we of course have 1 or 2 tasks that undergoes gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness design, and later on monitoring and evaluation. So this is the first step. Once you do the analysis, then you go into defining these objectives, and you look for the work packages that are really of interest, and tasks that are of interest. And what is very important is that once you do your homework as a gender mainstreaming expert, or as a team that has a certain background in it, that you discuss it with the work package leaders, and if needed, even with the partners that are involved, just to be assured that you are not imposing something that is not, at the end, that the evaluation will show that it's not possible to be implemented or to be evaluated, data to be collected. So this is about documents, similar approach. What do we want to achieve? We always strive to have disaggregated data whenever possible. It's not always possible when it comes to the reports, but if it is possible to include such as statistics when we do, for instance, a report for an economy or for a certain topic, or we do certain policy briefs, trying to emphasize the differences that we're in research and innovation, that is the topic of Policy Answers. Then, of course, the language is very important. I will come back to the inclusive language later on. Then accessibility when it comes to the document, so that everyone that should have the document, it's easy for them to find the document, to use it. Then you also have to think about people that have some impairments. So there are many different things that needs to be considered. And of course, for the project, once again, you have to be very pragmatic, identify the most relevant ones, and then, transpose it to the different tasks. And for the project management, it's all about how you deal with the people, what type of leadership you have, what type of the safe space you create for the team, but I will come back to that later once we start talking more in depth about the toolbox. So there are many different tools if you go out there. Many of them has already been well developed by other projects, organizations. So you're free to, of course, under different terms of use that they are offering, to use them, but you will find yourself in a situation that you will need to adapt them largely to your own context, because they are not easily transferable to the given setting of the project. So in our case, we decided to go with 4 tools, and most of them apply to all the 3 key types of activities: engagements, documents, and project management activities. So the first one is creating safe space, then the data collection, inclusive communication, and inclusive project management. So these are the 4 key tools that we are going to use and that we're already using in Policy Answers projects when it comes to gender and inclusiveness mainstreaming. So here is on this table, you can see how are they used. For instance, the tool 1, 2, 3, and 3 of them are used, for instance, for the engagement. So creating safe space, collecting data, and inclusive communication. All of them are important when you organize different types of engagements with your stakeholders, target groups, or beneficiaries. For the documents, of course, data collection and the language that you use when you produce these documents, because they have to follow certain rules when it comes to inclusive language and accessibility. And of course, when it comes to project management, it's about how you deal with people, creating safe space, and there is a toolbox that's called Inclusive Project Management that I'm going to present just in a while. So as I mentioned, most of the tools are already available. The same applies for our tool, Creating Safe Space. This is a tool that has been designed by UN Women, Intersectionality Resource Guide and Toolkit. They have a very, very comprehensive toolkit. So we have adapted it for our needs of the Policy Answers project. And the idea is to use this tool to prepare us for consultations, meetings, interviews, workshops, and other forms of engagement in our project, and also to guide the interaction between the project team and the workplaces. You can even use it in your own workplace if you want to extend the use of the tool. So in the guideline that we have designed, for all of these bullet points presented on the slide, there is a guideline how to basically do that. So even say about promoting safe and meaningful dialogue, what you need to do in order to achieve that. How do you organize the dialogue, and how do you enable everybody to have equal access, equal say, and how to deal with the ones that are not obeying to these principles. Another factor that we need to consider is accessibility when we organize different events. So it's the venue. Is it allowing everybody to access it? And there are many different things that needs to be considered. Then we need to be sensitive of time and space. What time are we organizing? Is it something that is relevant? What is happening in the same venue? So the space, if there is another event, what type of an event is there? Because there are situations when you have a type of event that is not sharing the same principles like the one that you're organizing. So you have to be very aware and conscious and sensitive about time and space when you organize a certain event. Then, of course, what we already know from the GDPR as well, consent must be free and informed, and we even need to maintain confidentiality and privacy at all times. And very, very important when you have gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness is that to ensure safe feedback mechanisms. How can everybody give their opinion back to the organizers? And one aspect that it's omitted sometimes is how to refer people when there are support services. So in the guideline there, there is a description how to achieve every single one of these aspects when you're organizing a certain workshop, event, conference, and alike. So that is, or it can be a project meeting. It doesn't have to be a large-scale event. When it comes to the data collection, well, in our case, we've decided to go with the sex disaggregated data, meaning that the data that we're collecting is women and men only, which doesn't mean that in the future this might change, but at the moment that is the situation, and that is the limitation that is suitable for our project at the moment. As opposite to gender sex disaggregated data that takes into account other genders as well, not only female and male. So that is something that I have to emphasize. That's why we are using the sex disaggregated data collection tool. But regardless what type of data you're collecting, the approach is more or less the same. You have 4 phases. First, you need to establish objectives. Why are you collecting the data at the end of the day? Not just for the sake of data so that you know how many men and women were at a certain event. So you have to state the objectives, because those objectives will later on feed into the analysis and why are you doing it and how you're going to use the results. So for us, so it's very much dependent on the project. For us, it's important to see the difference between women and men when it comes to capacity building in research and innovation, when it comes to policy processes. So we have defined, as you can see on the slide, this is just a very brief extract from our objectives, what we want to look at, why we are collecting those data. And then once you have the objectives, you know why are you collecting, you define the indicators, define the approach, which indicators you're going to collect, number of this, number of that, if there is a change in certain, if they undergo certain training, what has been achieved. So there has to be indicators, because those are the ones that you're going to be collected and later on analyzed. So you define the approach, what indicators, how you're going to collect them, who is going to collect them, and then you actually collect the data and you do the analysis and feed in the findings wherever it is suited and appropriate as defined in the tool. So this is also presented in our guideline. Then we have the third tool, which is the inclusive communication. We have decided, as mentioned, at the beginning, we've already explained what inclusiveness is about, but it's also in this tool, it goes more into depth. So for us, it's very important, the inclusive language, but be aware when we talk about inclusive language, it's not just about the choice of words. As you know, like in any other, not only when it comes to inclusive language, it's also the tone of speech and the manner of conversation. So the 3 aspects, if of course it's audio, those are the 3 aspects that we need to to consider. Then the inclusive representation is the second aspect that is also explained in the tool in our guideline, so that we avoid any prejudice or harmful stereotypes. You all know the stereotype about how a researcher is portrayed, how an IT specialist is portrayed, or you have seen all female panels or all male panels on conferences and meetings. So the idea is to mirror the reality, and the reality is not the same like the stereotypes that we see around at different conferences or publications or on the net. And then inclusive dissemination, how to achieve. There are many different things on how to be inclusive in dissemination. These are just few examples. You can have dissemination in multiple languages. You can have an option for audio, for listening, for the content. Always prefer open access publications, engage with the public to lower the gaps between your target groups, and of course, give space and platform to experts from diverse universities, genders, and career stages. That is very important. So that is not always the same people, the same, the higher ranking researchers, and never giving a chance for somebody who is in an earlier stage of the career, which doesn't not necessarily mean that it doesn't have the qualifications. So trying to be as diverse as possible when you organize certain dissemination or management events. And then inclusive project management, 3 key pillars. Diverse project research teams. I will not once again emphasize, but the importance of what diversity means. It means perspectives, different inputs, always interesting to have it, because they challenge the mindset and they challenge what we do. Then project team as a safe space, very important, because if the project team is not, you don't feel safe to express what you think about certain aspect. Of course, that has to be in a respectful manner. It has to be in no harmful manner. But if you don't feel that you're in a safe space, of course, you will not provide your input, your feedback, and then the project will suffer if everybody does that. And then inclusive leadership. When it comes to inclusive leadership, it's not just about dialogue. It's not just about providing people space to express their opinions. It's very much important to have cultural intelligence, something that is very much valued in the Western Balkan economies, especially, so that you understand the cultural difference and how different people with different cultural background react, act, how they would like to work together. So it's very, very important to understand that cultural intelligence in collaboration. So that is the third pillar that is explained in our guideline. There are some recommendations on how to achieve that. And of course, there is tons of references that we have provided for somebody that wants to read a little bit more on the topic. So those are the 4 tools that we have proposed, that we have agreed upon, and then that we are going to use in the Policy Answers project. We also have a dedicated capacity building and peer networking program. You can see on the slide what we are planning to do. For first thing, we are planning to do early next year. During springtime, we would like to have our regional training academy. So we're going to talk more into deep depth about these topics that we already, mentioned a little bit about gender mainstream and inclusiveness. So at least we will have 4 modules, and then we will record this one so that we can have a multiplier effect, so that it does not stay only within the project. Then one other idea that we had is that we are going to collect different resources from our stakeholders, but also design something ourselves. And the idea is to have them whenever possible in local languages from the Western Balkans economy, so that everybody can, or we can have more people accessing it and, increase the level of inclusiveness. Then the peer exchange, of course, we will have the peer learning webinars that we are planning. And then we're also going to have one regional consultation meeting. So it's going to be like a meeting where we're going to invite not only people from the research and innovation, but also from the policy processes and from the gender mainstreaming gender mainstreaming experts, and there we will discuss together what can be done to improve gender mainstreaming and inclusiveness. And I know that a lot of things are already ongoing, and I know that, for instance, we all work on our gender equality plans, but there are also other things that we need to consider. And this is going to be a consultation meeting where we are going to have this expert discussion, and at the end we will have some recommendations which are not going to be just for the project. Of course, it's going to be for the policy makers, but for the ecosystem as well. And we have already performed stakeholder analysis. We have identified so many great initiatives that we would like to cooperate with, and we are going to invite them in our peer learning networking activities later on. And I'm very happy that today we are kicking off that process with one very dear project to myself personally, but also to everybody else in the Policy Answer projects. And I'm very happy to share the floor with my colleague Angela today. And then we are going to have promotion and awareness raising activities where we're going to use the platform that is is maintained within the project. It has been for a while in the Western Balkan economies, and to raise awareness on the topic. So we will have a dedicated gender mainstream inclusiveness newsletter. We are going to design certain articles when the time is right, when we are going to celebrate certain important dates for either women in STEM or something of that type. I'm not conscious of the time, but I'm almost there. So
we started a bit later, so we have still 2-3 minutes.
Yeah, I'm getting there. So I'm about the periodical assessment. So we have the guidelines. I've presented what the guideline involves. So it involves the results of the analysis, the toolbox that we are going to use, or we are already using some of it. And then it also focuses on how we are going to do the assessment. I don't like that word, but okay, the periodical assessment of the implementation of the guideline. So we have designed an assessment checklist, which is very, very, very simple, but still it does provide a quick snapshot of what is happening. And we are going to do that, will be done on at least on an annual basis. So first will be done by the end of this year, and this will be going to be done by our team from the Foundation for Management Industrial Research, but of course in coordination with the quality assurance team, and whenever needed and if needed in consultation with the work package leaders, because they are really the ones that have all the information when it comes to the different tasks within the work packages. And we are also using what is already out there, because we have something that has been designed even before we designed the guideline, and that is the spreadsheet for collecting sex disaggregated data. That is the place where work package leaders and task leaders already provide data when it comes to engagements. So that is collected already by our work package leader, Formicablu. So these are the two key documents that we are going to use. But of course, there are many other things that we can use, including the consultation with different stakeholders involved in the project. So this is a snapshot of our checklist, organized by the type of activities, the engagements, documents, and the project management. So these are simple yes and no questions, but also there is a space for comments. And this is the place where I'm going to look at when we are going to think about good practices. We are going to think about how we are going to improve what we are doing in our project when it comes to more gender and inclusiveness, sensitiveness of our activities. And this is a very straightforward checklist that is also available in our guideline. And if there are many positive answers, that means that we have done tremendous work when it comes to gender and inclusive sensitiveness of our project. If there are many no, then we really need to rethink our approach, although I don't think it's going to be the case. I think that we're going to be somewhere in between, like always. And then we need to think about other tools, build capacities and resources. Basically, this assessment, the first one that we're going to do now, will show us the path towards. That's why we are not rushing with the capacity building activities. We are going to organize them next year, because we want to see what this first assessment will tell us, and maybe we will reshape something so to better address the needs. That's what mainstreaming and inclusiveness is all about. At the end of the day, that is how you put it in practice. And the idea is, once we have the data, once we have the quantitative data all together, it's analyzed, then we see whether there are some recommendations recommendation for addressing, you know, the three objectives that we set when we collected the data. That can be recommendation for the project, but I'm very much convinced that the recommendations are more important when it comes to the, you know, to the stakeholders, to the topic that you're addressing. If it is policy, if it is capacity building programs, then we can provide some concrete examples on how we can do that. And of course, highlighting good practices is always, it's always a must to identify and to highlight these good practices. So basically, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm very much looking forward to our Q&A session later on, so that we can, if you have any questions, discuss a little bit further all the topics. And I'm looking forward to all the next training activities, because that will be the space where we can go more into depth about the different aspects that I mentioned today. So looking forward to the next steps of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. It was really interesting presentation, in the same time easy to follow because of the visualization that you try to put it. And it's always nice when you have a guidelines, but like this, implementing a webinar and talking about it, it's even more much nicer and better. I would like now to give the floor to Angela. She's going to talk, as mentioned before, about the PBC project, which is really something that is in a correlation with our project. So Angela, please take the floor, and we will be here with the questions and answers. I would like as well, once again, to remind you that if you have some questions, to feel free to write it into the chat.
Thank you, Emilia, and thanks to both you and Gabriela for inviting me to share our experiences from another project that we are involved at as the University of Banja Luka. And I will speak more on the gender and inclusiveness dimensions in the project, because the project deals with other dimensions as well as part of the overall responsible research and innovation concept. So let me just see if this slide works. Good. Okay, so let me just give you a brief intro for those who are not acquainted with the project, about the project itself. It's a SWAFS project. It's part of the Horizon 2020 funding, and it involves 13 beneficiaries from 8 countries and is led by the University of Novi Sad. It's focused on embedding the responsible research and innovation in the Western Balkan countries, on the enhancement of the self-sustaining research and innovation ecosystems. And the main aim is actually to adopt a sustainable development framework, which is based on the RRI, the Responsible Research and Innovation Principles, at the local level. And it's also focused on improving the processes of development of smart specialization strategies where there are none yet, and also in those economies where there are S3 strategies, to work on the improvement of the implementation by embedding the RRI into both the S3 and the process itself. And also what we aim is to spark the open dialogue, which we are also doing through various events, and create a regional network, which I will talk about a bit later on about, and also to kind of become more embedded into the European research area, borders crossed. So the focus is on the 5 territories, let's say, of the implementation, which are implementing different aspects of responsible research and innovation. So for example, in Vojvodina region, we are focusing on public engagement and open access. In Republic of Srpska and Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are focusing on ethics, science, education, and open access, with gender equality as a cross-cutting issue. In Montenegro, it's public engagement and governance. In Albania, we are focusing on Kunevan Tail Lagoon, wetland ecosystem, focusing on public engagement with open science embedded, and the governance. And also in North Macedonia, city of Skopje planning region, focusing on science, education, and gender equality. So how do we actually do it? I think that's the most important part of this presentation, we are actually doing this through different activities. So one is the working groups that are established as a open networks of interested people across well, across the region, but also beyond the region as well, focusing on gender and ethics. That's one working group. The other is focused on science education and public engagement. And the third one on open science and open access. We also engage in developing different anchor activities as we describe them. These are the key activities within each of these territories that I mentioned in my previous slide, focusing on different aspects of RRI. So in one country, we have work with high school students, and in another country, we have work on development of institutional repositories. So it's a quite diverse, let's say, a collection of activities. And we also engage in open dialogue and mutual learning events. We had a series of events organized, and more will come until the end of the project, which is end of February next year. So I believe for today, I think you're mostly interested into what do we do regarding the gender dimension and gender inclusiveness and gender equality. So most of the activities are beyond the project level and project management activities, embedding the gender equality are focused through the working group 1 on gender and ethics, which is gathering 48 persons from Western Balkan economies and beyond. And what we did so far, so we organized a series of gender equality events. So focus of the events was on gender equality. And the very first one was in 2021 on the gender equality plans development, which was, I think at that moment, it was crucial to start talking about the gender equality plans, because the Commission introduced the requirement for the Horizon Europe projects. And not all of the, especially public institutions across the Western Balkan economies were aware of that and how to achieve that and how to approach it in a way that it makes sense and it's not just ticking the boxes in the Horizon Europe proposals. So another series of events that we organized this year was on actually how do we do with the already existing gender equality plans, sharing experiences from the Western Balkan countries, and also how do we go from strategy to action in terms of what did we learn so far in implementing our gender equality plans. And all these events kind of they were all recorded, so we have also let's say a database of video recordings of these events where people from the region share their experiences, which I think it's also valuable to you as well, and also beyond our projects as well, to kind of investigate the do's and don'ts and what to avoid and how to deal with gender equality in the context of the Western Balkan economies, especially in the more patriarchal settings that we live in still. So I would highly recommend it for everyone to look at it. I mean, I've shared also the links in the presentation, and it's going to be available so you can share it with everyone if you want. So the other thing that we did is, one of the key persons who did that is here as well. It's Elke. It's the mapping and analysis of existing gender equality plans across the Western Balkan economies. So thus far, 26 gender equality plans are mapped and analyzed and are published at our website with a special appreciation note. So what we did, mostly the process is driven mostly by Elke, is that we actually engage into analyzing the contents of each of the gender equality plan, checking the differences, checking the outstanding or innovative parts of the planned activities, let's say, and also understanding whether those jobs were introduced more for the sake of ticking the box or for the sake of actually making an institutional and cultural change in the said economies. This is just a list of the jobs that we have published appreciation notes about thus far. So there are links also to them. Some are in local languages and some are in English as well. And what we are actually having also is in our database as more of the JEPs identified. So this is not the exclusive list. There are more to come, but the analysis is in progress. Now, I spoke about a little bit about the mutual learning events, which are the key tool actually for engaging with different stakeholders and also projects on similar topics of interest and so on. One of the examples is what we did in terms of the gender equality and the gender inclusiveness through our project is that we had a workshop with students, both high school students and university students, and professors from both high schools and universities from Western Balkan economies, focusing on the perspectives of RRI and STEM education during the event on engaging science with and for youth that was held in April this year in Banja Luka. And the outcome of this mutual learning event was actually one of the things that we are kind of really proud of are the 10 recommendations for more inclusive and improved STEAM education, with a special emphasis and part which is focusing on how to engage and support female students in STEAM more. So, and this is a compilation of, let's say, recommendations that came not just from us as people involved in the project, but also from other stakeholders, including the students themselves. So I think that that's the most valuable part. And you spoke, Gabriela, about, you know, creating a safe environment where everyone can say what they really feel about or think about a particular topic. And this is what we had in mind as well when we designed the workshop. You also mentioned how to kind of co-create and co-design with the stakeholders, and this is exactly that. So the end result is actually these recommendations on how that we need to break the stereotypes during the teaching by promoting by promoting best examples and practices. And the students are actually reflected also on the history of STEM disciplines who have really good contributions made by female scholars that are not that well promoted also in the teaching part. So this should be changed. And also create tasks for a group of students or pupils that are of mixed gender, so to take care, and you spoke about it also in the toolbox that you have developed, how to kind of mix the genders and so on and so forth in order to achieve the better results and to have the better understanding. The third recommendation is to dedicate more time and efforts in working with female students and pupils, of course, that show the interest in STEAM. Because what we discussed at this workshop is that sometimes the female students are more kind of pushed outside of the STEAM world because you know, it's not custom to have more female students in these disciplines and so on and so forth. And it's also based on the cultural perceptions of what is a role model female work and what is not. So in order to break these stereotypes, it's needed to kind of empower also female students more by working with them and investing more time and efforts, and also to encourage them that they can actually do anything. And this was really something that students said, and that kind of struck me the most. And so avoiding the stereotypes that we encounter, and you mentioned that. and also collaborate with parents on development of interest for talented students and pupils. And I think this was one of the most unexpected recommendations that we came across, because it's actually, I think it's a notion that, yes, the teachers have their role, but the parents also have it. And working with the parents and collaborating with them on a school or university level, sometimes it can provide benefits as well to engage the students more into those sciences that there are less of that gender. So not just female into STEM, but also male into other disciplines as well, and other as well. And additionally, what we have, and I think I will wrap up with that, we have our YouTube channel where we kind of record our events. So I've just put the screenshots of different recordings that we already have, and we have also within the working group one podcast, which is well, driven by Gabriela. Sorry, I have to mention that. And it's actually on introducing different topics relevant to the gender equality and gender inclusion and gender dimension in research and innovation, and providing, let's say, a resource for everyone who are interested to kind of learn more or to engage and so on. So you're free to look at them. And this is my contact if you wish to contact me for any questions or comments. And I have time until 12 sharp, and then I have to leave. And I'm sorry about that. So yeah.
I will interrupt a second. I love the work you have done with for the STEAM education for girls, especially because they encounter double discrimination, because they're young and because they're female. So lovely recommendations. And I very much appreciate the last recommendation to work with parents, because there are a lot of stereotypes, what our children should be when they grow up. So lovely thing. Thank you very much for sharing that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. You're not interrupting. I did my part of the presentation, so it's fine. Open floor for questions.
This is an amazing example of how two projects can cooperate in the same times, sharing the same values, and in the same time we can see that even that on the end we have like different kind of activities to implement, but somehow we are cross-cutting with all of the activities, and that we can support each other. Thank you, Angela, very much for this. We see in the chat that we have from Miss Angela recently published action plan for gender equality from the University of Pristina. So you can find it in the chat with a link. The action plan that was posted by our colleague Alma. Thank you for this. I see that in the chat we don't have questions, but I would like to encourage you, if you would like to take the floor and maybe to ask something or to say something, we still have time if you're willing to share some of the things. If not, while you're thinking about it, I would like to encourage you to send all of your questions and all of the information that you're having by mail. So it's going to be our pleasure for Angela and for Gabriela to answer on all of your questions. And in the same time, all of the presentations and the materials are going to be posted, and I will send you a brief mail with all of the information. So you will have all of the links that were presented and all of the data that was shared. In case you don't have anything else to ask or to add, I would like to thank you.
Comment something, Emilia.
Yes.
Also on what Gabriela also highlighted about, and Angela said in one of the recommendations about parents involved in education, that's really recognizing that most part of our education happens at home as well. So, and that connects with the open schooling movement in Europe, which is very strong, and it's gaining more strength. And I also would recommend to get in touch with the open schools, or this movement and network that it's also in many countries gathering schools that are being opened and involving parents and industry and universities with the schools and for the schools. That was my comment.
Thank you, Andrea. So I would like to thank you all for being present today, and to wish you a pleasant rest of the day. And I will give you the floor to Andrea to close this webinar, and in the same time to wish you, to send you some kind of nice words as the end of this webinar.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you very much, Angela and Gabriela. They were very inspiring and clear, and also motivating presentations for going further with this path. As Gabriela mentioned at the beginning, I think we are all new on this, in the sense that all this corpus of knowledge and perspectives coming from history and from sociology are not so new, but at the same time new in the way we are making actionable steps. So I like the acronym KEY is key, meaning keep educating yourself. So I think we have a lot to do on that, and while we are learning, we also have a lot of room to implement the new ideas and things that have worked for others. So this is the invitation to look further and to share the process. And I hope we will see us again and more colleagues in the next webinars that will be coming and will be timely announced. And thank you very much.